Hi and welcome to Demos Galore. I'm Tran and I'm very excited because I get to share with you the Classic Cloche Bundle from page 22 as well as the Sweets and Treats stamp set from page 11. Let's start with the Classic Cloche Bundle. Now, I think it's a general rule of thumb that things are automatically cuter if they are miniature or if they're displayed under glass, and this set has both. Cloche comes from the French word for bell, and you can see you get a bell-shaped dome that can go over this beautiful village scene or the really cute birds. The Classic Cloche stamp set includes 13 stamps. There are 3 sentiments. It's the most wonderful time of the year, warmth, joy, happiness, and the magic of Christmas never ends. For the cloche itself, there are separate shapes for the main dome along with the base and a little knob at the top. There's also this stamp with 3 little dots that could represent snow or just add a little extra textured look. The rest are layering stamps, and all of these are made of clear photopolymer, so you can see through the stamps to line up your layers. For the birds sitting on branches, you start out with an outline, and then there are 2 separate stamps to fill in the colors. For the village scene, it's a similar 3-step process, and a tip for this one is to keep your eye on the little windows in the buildings. That's going to help you get everything aligned just right. You could use all 3 steps, or you could just use 1 or 2 of them. So for example, I think either of these look great by themselves. You could also stamp the outline and only fill in the houses, leaving the trees as bare branches for a different look. Now I know this set focuses on Christmas and winter, but I just want to show you how versatile it can be. By changing up the colors, you could also create a spring or summer look, or even fall. And it's always great when you're able to extend your supplies and get more use out of them. The coordinating cloche die set includes all of these shapes. 3 of the dies help you cut out your stamped images. So there's 1 for the cloche, 1 for the birds, and 1 for the village. The rest of the dies create extra shapes. There are several that create multiple trees to save you time. And each of the trees has these cut-in details that you could lift up for some extra dimension and texture. This one creates branches for the birds, or you can turn the branch vertically and make it into a little tree. These 2 provide an alternate base for your dome so that you could layer the solid one underneath the pattern one for an interesting look. And finally, you've got 2 that will make a curved hillside if you are creating a scene. Okay, let's take a look at some samples. Now, the bundle doesn't have its own set of papers, so my samples use the Whimsy and Wonder Designer Series paper. I kept these 2 cards simple, straightforward stamping to give you an idea of how cute that is. I did add a little bow from the white glittered Organdy ribbon, but there are no dies for these 2 cards. So here's the birds, and here's the village. One of the coordinating products is the Cloche Shaker Domes on page 23. Here's what it looks like, and notice that there is adhesive backing on both the front and the back. That means that even if you don't have a die cutter, you can create a shaker that has a cool shape. All you have to do is stamp your image, put in a couple of pinches of sequins or whatever it is that you want in there, peel off the backing from the shaker dome, and then stick it right on. And that's exactly how I created this card. I used the subtle shimmer sequence. It's a lot of fun, and again, you don't need a die cutter. Now, if you do have a die cutter, you can step it up even more. I cut out the close shape from the Designer Series paper and then was able to layer it over the dome because remember, there's adhesive on the front side along the edges of that shaker dome too. Here you can also see the cool texture in the space. That's from the die. And then the sentiment was heat embossed onto the pattern paper. In this version, I cut out the close shape all the way through the designer series paper layer and the card front so that the stamped image and the shaker are both actually on the inside of the card. And here's a different type of shaker using the dies. This time it's a faux shaker made using the clear envelopes so that it's flat. And again, the stamped image is inside the card. And finally, this version uses a piece of clear window sheet. I use Stays On ink to stamp the outline of the cloche onto the sheet, and then the stamped image is on the inside. Now don't worry, I did not waste those pretty pieces that were cut out. I put them onto basic white cardstock and added some more die cuts, and then I trimmed around the outer edge of the shaker dome. And you can use this for a gift tag or an ornament, or both. Let's take a look at the Coordinating Sweets and Treats set from page 11. There's a cloche in this one that is a little bit different than the other one. The lines are a little bit more whimsical, and there's no knob at the top, but there is this cool cake stand, and so you can mix and match those pieces together. And then there are 5 treats with corresponding sentiments. There's a Christmas pudding, as in bring me some figgy pudding, and so the sentiment is bring on Christmas. There's a caramel apple, a tasty treat for someone sweet, a pie, any way you slice it, I'm thankful for you, a heart-shaped cookie, and love ya, and a cupcake with happy birthday, and I love the font here. I've made an easel card that really helps to show off the dome, and I'm going to show you how to make one too. I'll start with stamping the cloche onto some vellum cardstock, and I've got my little foam mat from the Stamparatus underneath because I like to have that extra bit of cushion when I'm using the clear photopolymer stamps. Here's my stamping block and here's my stamp. Now because clear stamps are much more flexible, you want to be careful when you're putting it down. I like to lay down one side of it and then just kind of let the stamp fall down naturally where it wants to. And then I will press it into place. That way I'm not twisting it or distorting it in any way. Sometimes I like to bend the stamps on purpose, but not for this particular one. I'm stamping with Stays On ink so that it will dry quickly on the vellum, and I'm leaving myself extra room at the top because the die is going to cut out the little knob at the top of the dome. I'm also making sure to leave myself room at the bottom, and you'll see why in a little bit. I'm stamping the cake stand on smoky slate cardstock. It's a time saver to use colored cardstock so you don't have to color in every piece. I stamped the sentiment onto basic white cardstock and I'll cut it out with a stitched rectangle die. This is Stays On ink on pearlescent specialty paper. I'm going to be using Stampin' Write markers to color, and they blend well on this paper. Or you might choose to stamp on regular cardstock with your Memento Tuxedo Black and use your blends markers to color in the image. I'll be coloring this in with Cinnamon Cider, Blushing Bride, and Mint Macaron. I'm taking a cue from the color palette in the Whimsy and Wonder Designer Series paper. I'm switching out the foam mat for a silicone mat to protect my work surface because now I'm going to put on some of this shimmery white embossing paste for an extra special touch. And after my pieces have been prepped, I'm ready to start cutting them out. Now I am going to use my die to cut this out, but I don't want to cut out the bottom part of it just yet. So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and put the die in place, but when I go to put the other plate on, I'm going to cover these parts, but not down here. It's going to go through like this. That way everything on this top part is going to cut, but there's not going to be pressure down on this part of the die, so the bottom edge is not going to cut. So when it comes out, you can see that this part has cut out, but it's still connected down here. I'm now going to use my snips and cut out like a little band underneath. So cut a border of vellum down here, and then I'm just going to take it up to connect with where the die had already cut it. And you could also cut out the shape by hand and just leave a little margin down here. I have the cake stand that I cut out earlier, and I trimmed it very closely at the top edge, but just did a rough cut around it otherwise. And I put some Stampin' Seal on the back. Now I'm going to place this over the vellum. And you can see why we needed to have this extra margin of vellum. It's so that there'd be something for this to stick to. And once they are together, then I can go ahead and trim around the cake stand shape. Once I made sure that the embossing paste was dry, I fussy cut out the pudding, popped some glue dots on the back, and adhered it on. And now I'm ready to assemble everything. These are all the pieces for the card, and the measurements will be in the description box as well. The piece of mint macaron cardstock is 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 2 1/2 and 5 1/2. All of these pieces are 4 inches wide. This one is 5 1/4 inches high. This one is 2 7/8, 2 3/8, 2 3/8. Our piece of glittered organdy ribbon is 20 inches long, and then we've got the pieces that we worked on earlier. The sentiment was die cut out with the stitched rectangle die that is 2 1/2 by 1/2 inches. Start by folding down your creases and reinforce with the bone folder, and then you'll use Stampin' Seal to put your designer series paper layers on. And for the front, I'm lining them up right against that crease. Now on the inside, you could choose to make your basic white layer shorter than this, but I like to use the full length because then that way I don't have to worry about any gaps between it and the designer series paper layer if I haven't cut things precisely. To put the sentiment on, I'm using a strip of foam adhesive sheet that's been cut down to the right size. Next, I'm going to glue the cake stand in place, and I'm lining up the top of the cake stand with that crease in the card. I put a glue dot down because that's going to help me place my ribbon so that I can tie a bow. There's our card. And once you've made it, it's easy to adapt it to the other treats in the set. So this Halloween version uses the Pansy Petals paper and linen thread. The Thanksgiving one uses Beauty of the Earth paper, again with linen thread. For the Valentine's one, this is Whimsy and Wonder paper with the Open Weave ribbon in polished pink. This also has some shimmery white embossing paste, except I added some polished pink ink to it. And finally, the birthday version uses the same paper and ribbon, and there's a little bit of Wink of Stella on the icing. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you'll have as much fun with these two sets as I did. Remember to ask your demonstrator if you have any questions. Enjoy the rest of Demos Galore and have a great day.